are listening to the most original talk radio station anywhere. We are LA Talk Radio at latalkradio.com.
You're listening to Fouché Way with Brandon Fouché, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Well, hello, and welcome to the Fouché Way radio show, live every Thursday at 1 o'clock p.m., sponsored by the nonprofit organization called Canine Hope for Improvement Program, where we hope to improve the quality of our dogs' lives by moving towards a no-kill society. The number here is 818-602-4929. You know, for most people, it will be very difficult to make changes in their life. And this can cause anxiety and stress, especially relating to dog aggression, because we don't know the right path to take because there seems to be so many directions to go in. But really, they're not. The reason it seems that there are so many directions is that there are so many reasons we give for having dogs. And when we realize that we are being taken on a journey, we all are coming from a different place mentally and emotionally with our dogs. And when we finally realize the kind of leaders that we have to be, the dog has already formed an opinion about us that they believe to be true. That opinion is that we are members of the pack and not leaders. We send conflicting messages to them that cause neurotic behaviors that only increase in severity as time goes on. So if we are conflicting in our relationship with an animal that is hardwired to hierarchy, they will not be good followers. They would rather climb the ladder of hierarchy and begin to control an emotion that they don't fully understand and to perceive to be weak. I have seen people to try to change, and they will change a little bit for a little while, but it's the consistency that will make the difference. We sometimes look at the dog and say, he's doing it again, and we didn't even realize that we were too. We slipped back into our old ways without even noticing it, but expect for the dog to never forget his lesson. Be honest with your part. If you haven't been doing what you should, stop and start doing the right thing. I know this is difficult to do because it requires that you be present. See, we look at this present moment as though it's a stepping stone to the next moment. And that is not what your dogs are doing. They are living in the present. So if you don't understand why your dog is doing what he's doing, and that confusion is causing you to feel insecure, then listen to me good. Because people will see you with your out-of-control dog and make you feel like you never want to take another walk because of the things they say to and about you will make you want to go and hide. You know, I remember a time in my life when I was growing up in St. Louis, Missouri. It's a socialization period in my life, and I was living with my grandmother. And I remember there was a neighborhood store, and in the area that we lived in, it was not racially mixed. And on the corner was that neighborhood store. It was run by a big black man. I never knew his name, but he played an interesting part in the development of an event in my pre-adult life. And although I did not know his name, I will never forget what he would say every time I entered his store. And this is what he would say. If you ain't got no cash, you can't talk no trash. And I assumed this man liked me because, to my knowledge, he would only say it to me. Then he taught me to slam the nickel that I was holding onto the countertop that I had to tippy-toe up to reach like I would see my uncle slam the dominoes down. Then he would say, after I'd done that, You got some cash? Well, you can talk some trash. And after that, he would say something later that would be very disturbing to me. This is what he would say. What you want, white folk? And I'd say, like a soda or something. But he would say, what you want, white folk? And it didn't matter who I would come into that store with, he would call me white folk. Now, I'm telling you this story because it was one of the many things that led me to dogs. You see, things that people have done or said to you in your life can affect how you're going to come out. And if you don't understand why it's happening, you're going to be in trouble. You see, when I was growing up, you didn't question adults. You didn't talk back. You did what they said, and you obeyed them. You didn't question. There wasn't a lot of communication and socialization between kids and adults. We were to be seen and not heard. Much like the concept of training today, we just want the dog to do what we say. We don't care why they don't want to do it. And in this case, I learned later, it had to do with my mother, who was very light-skinned with hazel eyes. And so because of her, it was the name that was given to me. And I was teased and taunted, and of course it made me feel different, which led to an insecurity. So I ended up having just a few friends after that. And then my mother moved to an area where they had a lot of horses, cattle, and other animals and dogs, and I socialized with animals a lot. I learned that when an animal socializes with something, its natural instinct is to be what we call loving until they misinterpret our intentions. And so with them, I felt love, security, confidence, and this helped me to change. But now, today, I ask very quickly, why did you say that? And I don't hold back. It's funny. I see this kind of thing happening with our dogs. And it is said that if you are lucky enough to live long enough, you might get a chance to understand some of the things you know. And the analysts today, I hear, say that the number of Americans who consider themselves multiracial is growing faster than any one racial group in the entire country, jumping 6.6 between 2006 and 2012 because of people marrying across racial lines, meaning 15% of all new marriages are interracial within the year 2010. And they say more people are dying in the United States than babies are being born in the white population. Man. Now that's a scary thought for any race. But look at this. I remember when people were buying dogs back in the day, but not too long ago, everyone was into purebred dogs. We had to get a pure Dobie, a Shepherd, or a Rottweiler, or a Poodle, and on, man. I mean, rush to the breeder or the pet store for a purebred dog. Now, look at what's happening. You hear people say, don't go to the breeder to get your dog. People frown on the fact that it's a purebred dog. Don't go to the pet store and buy a dog. That's a puppy mill dog. We say get a shelter dog, a rescue dog. And what's in the shelter? Multiracial dogs, mixes, mutts. Sometimes people ask me, they say, Brandon, what are you? And I tell them I'm a mutt. Sometimes I say, I'm a cross between a wolf hybrid, German Shepherd, Doberman. I'm a mutt. Look at what's happening, people. Times are changing. We're going to have an open mind. We're going to have to be ready to accept something new and different that might initially make us feel uncomfortable. But ultimately, it will all work out. But how long will we hold on to old ways of thinking until we are ready to do this? Well, that will be up to you. This is why I talk the way I talk about dogs in general. I have a doctor friend of mine that told me that the scientists believe now that we can control genes by switching them on and off. It's a genetic expression. The genes don't change, but the genes don't change, but they don't have to be switched on. It's called EPI genetics, meaning we are not limited by our genes. And these people that have been listening to my show now for the last, I think, year now, coming up on the last year, are hearing some of that. That's what I'm talking about when I say we don't have to bring out certain behaviors in our dogs, even though they already exist. And this is true because there are some hormones in us that should not be stimulated. We see this in our drug addiction. I mean, this person made me feel insecure for a long time about me. And a lot of people feel insecure about their dogs because of what others say. It's a pit or it's aggressive. And I've been doing this for so long, I have seen aggression in every breed, not just one. That's why it's important to control all dogs by understanding what they need so no one can make you feel insecure. Because you will be in control of the situation if you understand what they need. You started out in control. Why do you think you took that dog on at the last day, at the last hour? Why did you fall for that sad story about him being abused? Why? Why did we want to rescue him? These situations occur all the time. It's because we can control the situation by saving him. It's something that is in us. And there's nothing wrong with that. But now you've got to use that same control that you had in the beginning to save him in the end. You saved him to help him because there was something in you that needed to help. Now that you've got him, you see that he's got his own separate set of problems that are basically directly related to us. Now the dog needs help again. Will you work a little harder to save him, to help him out again, and initially help yourself? That's why you started this. And so my guests today are all here, and they're all working a little harder, and that's how they found me. And my first guest has a dog that came to me because they were being aggressive to all people, even aggressive to the owner. And man, that is something. And my first guest name is Christy. Christy, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. If people have gone to my Facebook, they've taken a look at that little cute little dog, and I'm sure he sucked a lot of people in. And they come right in with the little sweet kisses and hugs, and what does he do?
He growls and he tries to bite them.
Tell us your journey. What have you been going through before you met me? Can you explain that to our listeners?
Sure. My husband and I had a miniature schnauzer for 15 years, and we lost him in December. And we had another rescue schnauzer at home, and we thought it would be a good idea to replace our beloved schnauzer with a new puppy schnauzer. And I proceeded to go online, being that I had just relocated back to Los Angeles, and came across an ad for a breeder down in the southern part of San Diego who was breeding schnauzers, and called and came across a litter of schnauzers that he had. So, of course, I contemplated it for less than a day, didn't put any real thought to it, and drove down there by myself and picked up this puppy and headed home. And within 2 days of getting him home, he wasn't even 3 months old, started to notice food aggression with him. Anytime you put your hand near his food or put your hand near him or on him while he was eating, he would literally growl, and it looked like he was in the early stages of beginning to bite.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I had never had a dog with these types of problems, so I...
Keep talking. I think we lost someone. They're calling in. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So at this point,
Hi.
I
Okay, go on.
Okay.
At this point, I basically was just kind of dumbfounded and not knowing what to do, and that's kind of how I came to you. I had called you initially, and I remember you asking me, why are you putting your hand near the puppy's food? And I couldn't answer you. I guess I was testing the puppy over and over and over and over to see whether he would bite me or growl at me.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you told me to stop doing that, in the process of this, the breeder had told us to do what's called alpha dominant, which means to hold the puppy's neck down so that they would submit. And unfortunately, that made the puppy more aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
So I had called you. I'd gotten your name from our groomer, and you had questioned to why we were putting our hand near the puppy. And as soon as we stopped putting our hand in the puppy's food, the food aggression relented and went away. So that's the early part of how I came to you. But unfortunately, I did not go to you as a trainer at first, or as someone who could help me with my dogs. I went with another trainer.
Mm-hmm.
And that trainer used positive reinforcement using food and treats to teach the puppy how to do tricks, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned is that the behavior wasn't getting better. He was still growling. He was still trying to bite us. We couldn't take him to be groomed. It was just becoming very stressful.
Mm-hmm.
And my groomer said, you have to call Brandon Fouché. And I said, well, I'd spoken to you previously, and I think it was time because he was biting my little girl who's 8. He'd bitten her several times, and so that's how we ended up finally just saying, I think we need to do something different.
It's interesting.
And that's how we got.
Yeah. It's interesting what leads us in a direction. First we go in the direction, and of course this is normal, that, close to what we feel, And I'm sure that when I was talking to you about him, you were a little, taken back because...
I was.
I'm sorry?
I said I was.
Yeah. And, I could tell in your voice, and, because here's this guy saying, this is what I think. I don't think this is too much of a problem. I think, let's decide whether this is genetic or learned behaviors. And usually if you have dogs in this day, we haven't really been taught how to think that way. So we don't know how to accept that kind of talk, And we think that maybe someone's trying to pull the wool over our eyes or take our money or whatever, And I remember when you came to me, because at the time that you come and you bring your dog, even though the dog is there for me to evaluate, I'm also evaluating the person, And you can find that after we talk that, wait a minute, maybe this is something different. And what made it different for you is when you came back and you saw those videos. Am I correct?
Well, yes, because on the videos that you had shown us, Rooney wasn't expressing many of the behaviors that I had been explaining to you.
Mm-hmm. And
it seemed that...
Go on.
I just said it seemed like... I guess in my mind I was thinking, is it me? Is it something that I'm doing because am I making him aggressive?
Mm-hmm.
When in fact the tough answer to that was yes. My family and I were behaving in a way that was making him more aggressive.
Right, and that way, which is so important, is the reason that this show is here. That way that you were treating that dog came out of love and affection.
Absolutely.
And when I say love and affection can create aggression, and you've, people on the show have just been hearing me say it for a year. I've been saying it for some time now. That it truly does. And if we're going to achieve this no kill, we're going to start having to understand what is meant by that. The love that we bestow upon our dogs is misinterpreted as weak. And so it pushes that hormone within the dog to become assertive and dominant and sometimes aggressive. And it's not just the physical love that we show, but it's all the things that we give our dog that we think they want, like the toys and the games that we play. I think you understand that completely now.
I do.
Yeah. And look, when I say this is a pack, and you've got kids, and you've got a dog, and that dog considers your family to be a part of a pack, and even what you do as a living is just a pack of kids too. Can you feel that? I mean, you're a principal at a school, and you deal with kids that act just like those little dogs. And you got to be on them all the time. You know, I always look at dogs at like 2-year-olds because they're always me, my. You know, they want it all. And your dog looked at you as a member of the pack. And I mean, we're talking now, and your voice is, you know, pretty calm. But you were really going through some serious stuff there with your dog. I mean, biting you. When you can't put your hands in your dog's mouth and clip the little hair on his face, or brush his teeth, or check his paw, or clip his nails, or groom him in any way.
I couldn't do any. Rooney would not allow us to do. Rooney's only 7 months old, and you know, you would think a cute little puppy would allow you. He would not allow us to touch his hind legs, his back end. He wouldn't let us check his ears. He would bite our hand off if we turned the clippers on to try and even comb him or shave him. We took him to the groomers. It took them 6 hours to groom him because he bit the groomer so many times. I mean, I think as any human being, you want to have a sensitive emotion towards any pet that seems to be struggling. But when biting is involved, especially with my child, it was another level of concern.
Yeah, he was biting her too, right?
All of us. I mean, at one point, we were both holding him to try and even groom him because he couldn't go to the groomer, and he was biting us both simultaneously. It was crazy. It's crazy to think that we were putting ourselves, but you know, we thought he had to be groomed, so we did the best that we could with what we were doing. But we literally suffered through getting bit on the hand several times in the process.
Yeah, and the only, you know, I always say that we accept training because it was given to us. There was never an option. And so we look at a dog like that and we say, well, he needs to be trained, you know. You now know that training has nothing to do with the problem that you were having.
Correct.
You see that now, you know. That is so important because many dogs like your dog are returned to the shelter and destroyed. And when they give the shelter people that information, that's a dead dog walking, especially if they can't control it.
And I think it's funny that you mentioned that because we tried taking our puppy to the vet that we were seeing, and the vet could not touch him in any way, so we had to put a muzzle on him to go into the vet clinic. And in front of my daughter, the vet came out and said, I think you need to surrender this dog to a shelter or a rescue. And my response was, as soon as I do that, we both realize what will happen. And her response was, well, your daughter could be bitten in the face, or, you know, it'll be leaving a permanent scar. And then it was almost like manipulation to the point where it made me self-doubt, where I couldn't help this dog.
Yeah.
But I knew, and so did the vet, that if we did take him to any shelter, and as soon as I said aggression, they would have put this puppy down.
Yeah, he's gone, you know.
He would have been gone.
Oh, totally, you know, over the top. You know, when he came into my place, he's looking at Leroy and growling. Remember? He's like, hey, man, I will bite you because that's what I do. And he has been made to feel that that's his job. That's the sad part about this. We don't realize that we are positively reinforcing a negative behavior when we practice positive reinforcement. The way that humans
Well, I think what's interesting is as soon as we sat down in your office and Rooney saw one of your coworkers, he growled at him, and my husband's response was petting him on the head and telling him it was okay.
Right. Exactly.
So just that type of behavior tells Rooney, hey, my owner just told me I'm growling at someone, and if they come near me and I bite them, it's okay.
That's so wonderful that you get that. You know, some people say, how could that mean that? But you get that. I'm so happy. You know, in dealing with aggression, especially the kind of aggression that your dog is displaying, and we're not finished by any stretch of the imagination, but
oh no, I'm not done.
right. The evaluation was to just show you what could be done with this dog. Okay? And
right.
As much as people want to say or hear me say, this is what you do over the radio, it's difficult. Every dog is different when we evaluate. And so we don't want people trying what I told you to do for a reason that I would have told them to do something else, and then it doesn't work, and then I don't even know it, and that dog goes to the shelter and is destroyed. And they'll say it just didn't work. You have to
right.
be there. You have to talk to me. You have to go through this thing with me. And you brought your whole family to pick him up.
I did. I brought my husband and my little girl, who the puppy was intended for my daughter, and obviously that is it has been a huge letdown for her. She's 8 years old and cannot have this puppy that she so imagined that she would have.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So
yeah, it becomes your problem child now. You know, that's not what you got him for. But you know, moving forward, now that you've picked him up, and this is where the really important part comes in, to be able to transfer what I see and was able to do with your dog to you, so that when you go home, you are just as successful as I was at my place. This is the important part. And you are still amazed to this day and conflicted, because I want to say this before we get into this. You got this dog at a time when your other dog passed.
I did.
And so that emotion was poured into this dog. That's where everything began.
Right.
That's where everything began. And so this has been difficult for you. And this is what our listeners need to hear, how emotionally difficult this was for you, even to do the things that I told you to do.
Well, I think the techniques that you had told us to do, I felt like even while I was doing them, that I was hurting him, or that he seemed scared or afraid. And when I realized, I mean, we saw you on Saturday and started using the techniques, our homework that you had explained, just to do one thing, just one thing. And within a couple of hours of trying, and I think your term was to set him up to fail. Literally set him up for these experiences so that he could learn who's in charge.
Right.
And at first I was like, I don't know if I can do this, because I felt like I was like hurting Rooney, or I was causing him to be like, I'm as a child, like low self-esteem. I'm like, what am I doing? His ears are drooped, his head is down. But then I noticed within like 2 or 3 hours of the first thing that we did with him, the dog, I think I told you, he was literally following me and lying at my feet after we had, kind of done
the exercise
with him. Right. And I thought, what's that?
I said, when you did the exercise, you saw the shift.
Yeah. It was like and to be honest with you, once he kind of came out of this sort of droopy ears and what seemed to be that I was making him sad or hurting him, I really wasn't, because then he turned around and showed me affection in the way that I would have wanted him to, by lying at my feet. And I even think I told you he began licking my foot at one point. And I'm thinking, what is he doing? Because he was trying, as you and I talked about, he's telling me, I got what you said. I'm not supposed to do that, and that doesn't mean I'm going to bite you or growl at you in the process of listening to you.
Right. He was looking for you to become what you needed to become for him. And when that happens, you see a shift, you see a cloud, a halo come over that dog. and all the things that you actually wanted him for begin to materialize. Am I telling the truth? Isn't that what's happening?
Yes, that's what's happening, and it's been with, we've tried to kind of have these sort of, we've set up these experiences to sort of test him. And when you and I had consulted a couple nights ago, I did the front door test, is what I describe it as, where when somebody would come to the door, he would go to the door and growl, and if they put their hand out, he would try and bite them.
Yeah.
And
but that's when him going to the door with you, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we tested it, and I made my husband and daughter do it twice because the first time he didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. And so we did it again, and he still didn't do anything, and I couldn't believe it. He didn't make one sound. He didn't bark. He didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. And my husband had worked with him just the day before on it. So you're talking we just saw you Saturday, so within like 3 or 4 days, we've seen a huge improvement just in several of the behaviors we had concerns about. So it's reassuring that, there is hope for us, and that Rooney will be fine, and that he, like I said, we're in the early stages of this, but I'm certainly hopeful at this point.
Well, Christy, the most important thing here is that you guys are doing it. You're doing it.
Yeah.
And I don't need to come to your home. Yeah.
I think what I could tell people who have an aggressive dog is that you simply want to do what's best for them, and that's great, and that's fine. But I think what happened was, and I explained this to you, Brandon, is that it felt empowering not to be necessarily I was in control of the situation, whereas I thought I was in control before, but I really wasn't. Rooney was. And it's empowering because now I have this relationship with this 7-month-old puppy that didn't exist 3 or 4 days ago, where he now knows that if I don't want him to bark at the window or go to the door, he knows I'm meaning business now, and it's empowering for me because I feel safe. And when you have children in your home, or you're getting bit as an adult, and whatever's going on in your home environment, for me, having a safe dog around my child is absolutely priority. And now I feel like that we are more empowered to have this safe dog in our home because we've taken this control back.
Wow. Well, Christy, with that, I'm going to end. I mean, that's exactly where I want you to be. And I want to see him again, and I'm sure, we'll do that and get him back in.
Great. Well, I'll follow up with you again.
Absolutely, because we want to get him ready for the vet and for grooming and all of that. So I want to thank you once again for coming on to the show to explain to people you don't have to give your dog up, but you do have to change the way you think. Okay?
And behave.
Yes.
It's thinking and behaving. Absolutely. So, and thank you. Thank you for showing us an alternative way. So
You're very welcome, Christy. I will talk to you later.
Okay. Thank you. Right. Bye-bye.
Well, our next guest is a gentleman that we tried to have on last week, but we ran out of time. Richard, are you there?
Hey, Brandon.
How you doing, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure to have you on, especially with a work in progress. What's really important here in this conversation for our listeners to understand is that you now know all the things that you were doing that created the partner that's creating hell for you now. Okay?
Right.
And you did all these things out of love,
Right.
And you put so much emotional energy into these things. I mean, I don't even know if you realize how much emotional energy you've placed in this, but you did everything that one could do with a power breed that I would consider to be a no-no.
Right, yeah, totally.
I mean, you probably couldn't wait to get home to play tug of war with your dog.
Yeah.
And, you're a big, strong guy, And I remember in the past, before I became enlightened years ago, how I used to play tug of war with dogs. I mean, I'd make a workout out of it.
Yeah, both of us got a good workout from playing tug of war.
Yeah, I mean, you work on your biceps, and,
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And you created this dog to challenge you, man. You know?
Right.
And you do the whole alpha roll, pinning the dog down and throwing balls and anything that you could do to exert energy from this dog.
Right, because that's what I always read, is that you should keep your dog active and just a healthy lifestyle for him, physically and mentally. So we always just try to keep him active, and we just realized that's what's causing all these issues we were having with him.
Yeah. I mean, this was a dog that was going to the dog park, having a great time, and then one day, you see, when we do these things with our dogs, all the things that we have talked about on the different shows and what we're talking about today, we must understand that we are preparing the dog for something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're preparing him for something, and at some point, all of these inanimate objects that we're using to prepare him for, at some point, he's going to connect the dots.
Yeah.
And say, I think I can use this for this situation because emotionally it makes me feel the same way as when my owner throws something for me.
Right.
Or even when they finally grab a dog out of frustration and all of a sudden the lesson comes back, I'm supposed to hold on.
Right.
And you're...
So I want to share my backstory about my dog is that when we rescued him, he was 5 months, and the shelter told us he couldn't be around small dogs. So we took that into consideration, and we just tried to do everything we could for this dog. We took him to numerous trainers, socialized him early. If you met my dog, you would think he was the perfect bully dog, just perfect dog in general. We wanted him to be an ambassador for pit bulls because, they have such a bad name. So, if you met him, you would think he's perfect. He knows all his commands. He's great on walks. He's not reactive to other dogs when he's on the leash. And he knows all those, circus command tricks, the cute tricks that all the girls love to see. He's really popular in our building. So, So we started taking him to a dog park, and we always chose dog parks that separated the larger dogs, the smaller dogs. And he was fine. And then one day, I wasn't really paying attention, and someone brought a small dog in, and he just went after it. I have to say, the worst feeling that a dog owner could have is prying your dog's mouth open and having a small dog there and just having all these owners scream. That was seriously one of the worst experiences ever, just in general. So we learned, that pretty much stopped us from taking him to dog parks, and we took him to doggy daycare. And we told him that he couldn't be around small dogs, and they understood, and he went for several months. And one day we got a call saying that he attacked another smaller dog, and they told us to come pick him up, and they told us that we might have a mentally unstable dog, genetically there was something wrong with him, so we should just not let him be around dogs in general. So that was a huge blow for us, because we just wanted this perfect dog just around kids, people, and this other dogs. We could just leave him loose, and we don't have to worry about him. But we realized that wasn't the case. And I'm from New York, so I'm a really tough guy. And I realized after these incidents, he was just making me weaker as a person. I was getting anxiety attacks when other people with dogs approach, and I just felt this dog was controlling me. So he looked around, and then we found out about you. So we brought him in, and pretty much told us that everything that we were doing was wrong. We overtrained him. All the games we were playing, like you said, were just making him into a better hunter, in a sense. All the games of fetch and tug. I always read that for Tug, as long as you win or initiate it, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't the case. That was just making him like more confused about who the alpha was, and it was just causing a lot of behavioral issues. So after one day with you, at the end of the session, Dougie, he was unleashed in your office, and there were 2 chihuahuas just running around. Mm-hmm. And he just sat there staring at them, like not even like fixated. He was just sitting there, and that would have never happened. Like never happened. But that was just like within one day. Like you just told us, some steps to take, and it was instantaneous. And we've just been working on it. It's still a work in progress, but we're definitely seeing improvements.
We have a funny video of you on that Facebook with dogs, little dogs.
Yeah, my girlfriend told me how silly my face looks.
You got to take a look at it. I mean, and even the way your dog was. When you take control, man, that's what they want. And like you said, this is a work in progress. You've spent a lot of time creating this behavior in the dog, and it is a learned behavior. And whatever's learned can be unlearned, and whatever's genetic can be controlled by not feeding it. Okay?
Right.
And so the next time you come, I'm going to critique you on your walk and figure out where you might be going into, some areas where you feel like you don't have control. But all in all, man, your dog is a good dog, and he was led astray. Just like most of the dogs that are in shelters, the reason why it's so overcrowded is because all those dogs are tricked.
Right.
To being there, and you were tricking your dog also, and we got to change that. We've got to, I've always said dogs are like superheroes to me. I mean, the abilities that they have, we are wasting them on these silly predatory games. They don't have to come out, and you're learning that now. I'm so happy, and both you and your wife are walking this dog, and you're being successful with this, and I want you to continue.
Yeah. Thank you, Brandon.
You're very welcome, and I will see you soon, okay?
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming on to the show.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Now, our next guest is Nicole Brooklyn, and she's no stranger to the show. She's been on a couple of times. How you doing, Nicole?
Hi, how are you?
I know the little baby hung up the phone.
Yeah, sorry. She's really into the iPhone now. So.
No problem. I wanted to have you on, Nicole, because we always hear about, situations with pit bulls and babies and cats and, and this is not just people that dislike bully breeds. These can be people that are friends of yours who don't even realize that they have that stigma in the back of their head. And this is kind of like what I was saying in the first part of the show. Even with the gentleman with me, and he put that little thing in my head, and it kind of made me feel a certain way, and most people do that. They're like, oh, you got a baby and you're pit bull, but aren't you ever afraid? Or they throw these little hints out, and I want to know, because you sent me a picture with your dog and your baby, and I just want to ask you, even though you're doing it, do you still feel or have friends that bring that kind of stuff up?
Yeah. I mean, and at first I was afraid too. I wasn't necessarily afraid because he was a pit, but of course people always have opinions they have to say, which is really annoying and, can increase your anxiety when you're already dealing with this.
Right.
But, I was very nervous in the beginning because he does have some aggression issues that we've worked a lot with you, and he's gotten a lot better. But every time we have a new situation, it's a little scary. So, and in the beginning, we weren't really sure how he felt about her, but we, worked with you and we controlled the situation. And just as of recently, like she's been growing on him, like little by little. But I was really worried about her starting to walk and, eating food. And I thought, oh God, that's when you hear about things happening and, letting these other incidences like kind of maybe cloud my vision of the situation and whatever. And as soon as she started walking and eating, he became like her best friend. Like she starts feeding him and he's like, I mean, we control it and everything, but he loves her. He understood that she was kind of like a little person in the household and not,
right.
What is this thing? And
oh, that's so
he's
wonderful.
Like so much more comfortable around her now, and so then of course we're more comfortable and confident, which of course makes the whole situation much better.
Right. That's so great. I mean, because people have this stigma, man, and they can make you make mistakes by interfering
right.
with your chi. They throw you off, and we can't do that. We got to be strong. We got to do what we're supposed to be doing. So that means anyone that's listening, if you're slacking, like I said in the first part of the show, stop what you're doing and get back on track. Because when you
interesting, because I know that we when we first went to you, we were doing things wrong, and Sam does have some genetic issues, but we actually got another pit, which you'd suggested, who was really stable to be his kind of therapy dog, and it made such a huge difference. And when we got that dog, we first we did all the training with you, and we were really tough, and everything worked out great. And then we got a little lax, and then we got tough again when we got the other dog because we had to. And then they started getting along so great, and we really didn't have to worry anymore. So then we got a little lax. And then I got pregnant, and then we were like, oh, shit.
Right.
We really got to step it up again, because you kind of, once everything's going well, you get kind of lax and you don't realize.
Yeah.
And so then I think since we've had her, we really got us back on track and, had to think about what we were doing.
Yeah, it's so important for people out there listening to you that have kids and dogs and cats together. We will do what we need to do for a little while, and then we start to slack off. And that's why it's important to stay in contact with me, to stay in contact with people that are doing the same thing that you're doing, because when you make a mistake, in the streets we call them haters, they're the ones that's going to point their finger at you. So,
right.
See, I told you.
Right.
So you got to keep them in mind. That's what it means by when they say keep your enemies close. So they're going to keep you on your job, man. When working with dogs, I always say they're like 2-year-olds. Me, mine, mine. And when you have a 2-year-old, you got one ear, one eye on them all the time.
Yes.
There's no difference,
Well, and I guess I thought too, when we first had her, and I was like, oh God, how am I going to deal with this? And our one dog, she's great. She doesn't really have a lot of issues, so I wasn't too concerned about her, other than that she's big and we might just have to watch she didn't knock her over. But I was like, I don't know, because we got to a point with him and the other dog where we didn't have to watch anymore, and so it was very relaxed at our house, and I was like, I don't know how I can watch all the time. But then I started to realize you have to watch all the time anyway, because I have a baby, so you can't, even if the dogs weren't around, I would have to be watching all the time. So it's not really as hard as I thought it would be.
Yeah, you just got to up your game. You got to get better at it. Right?
Yes.
Every time I talk to someone, they say, Brandon, you just don't know. I said, look, I got 50, 60 dogs. Don't tell me I don't know. Or you hear something
it's kind of it's the thought of it is a lot more overwhelming than the reality, I think, sometimes. You get really panicked thinking about what could happen. And in reality, we've been through so many situations with Sam before we came to see you anyway, that, and then when I thought about those, and then I thought about all the good things that have happened with Sam since then, him being, we never thought he could live with another dog, let alone a baby and stuff. And so, and really seeing him with the other dog and how close they are and how comfortable, and now he kind of feeds off her energy, really kind of kept me focused, oh, we can do this because we've done something harder before.
Right. Well, I got to tell you, Nicole, you are someone to watch. So anybody I'm serious, anyone that's having a baby or thinking about having a baby, they need to talk to you, because you have gone through it. And you've gone through it, and you're so close to being perfect that you haven't really had to start over again.
Well, we haven't. And we also accept, though, like some of these people, I think maybe they were surprised because their dog always seemed perfect. When we started with Sam, he was like a 3-year-old rescue head who we knew he had all these issues that we didn't know how bad they were. But, it's been, we're working towards a positive. We've seen changes.
Yeah.
So.
And you've struggled. I don't want anybody to know that you haven't made mistakes, but you struggled. You mentally struggled. I mean, to the point where I think you needed some therapy for a second, just overwhelming stress.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize how much anxiety I had until I would start feeling so much anxiety when I was dealing with him, because he would, it brought out my anxiety because I didn't know. Like, we had the same situation at the dog park that your previous caller was talking about, and we'd been through. He had bit one of my friends when we first got him, so we'd been through those situations, and my anxiety level kept increasing. I didn't want to take him for a walk. I didn't want to have people over. I didn't know what would happen, and then I realized that, like, I had to be calm to deal with him. So how was I going to get there? So I did some therapy, and I really dealt with some things, and it's like helped me be, I think, a little bit of a better mom, maybe too.
Yeah, I always say my dogs make me a better person. Everything. Man, time's rolling. Look, Nicole, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing the story. And I'm sure this is not the last time, because there are a lot of people out there having babies, and I really say you are someone that they need to talk to, and I will be having people to contact you, and because this is really important, man. We want it all. We want the baby, the house, the dog. We want it all, and we don't want to have to give up anything, to have it all. Okay. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Nicole, and
thank you.
I'll be talking to you soon. And I want to thank you're welcome. I want to thank all of our listeners for listening to the Fouché Way Radio Show, and tune in next week, same time, same place. Thank you.
You're listening to Fouché Way with Brandon Fouché, right here on LA Talk Radio.